Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday, Wellness Wednesday. I hope you're having a fabulous day already. I know that it's not St. Patrick's Day anymore, but this is the most beautiful color of spring green, don't you think? And so if you hear me sniffly and stuff this morning, I just spent 4 days in Nashville this past weekend, and the climate change, plus we had a sudden shift back to winter briefly. So a little bit sniffly today, so if I'm a little coughy or whatever, just please ignore. It's just, we're in Florida, and it's definitely the pollening. Hopefully this little cool snap will slow it down a little bit. In any case, if you're just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana of 2 beautiful grandchildren. I am a significant other, a grad school student that's currently on a break, studying my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. Just finished my second term. So much needed break. I'm also the part-time program director for the local NAMI affiliate, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I am a wellness advocate, a jazzerciser, a runner. I could keep going for days, but I started Wellness Wednesday because I truly believe, or I've truly learned rather, on my journey through anxiety and depression, that sharing information with each other is really, really important. Sometimes we pick up things from other people that we might not have otherwise known, or that maybe we've heard of before and it just didn't click for us. And when we find out it's working for somebody else, we give it a try, kind of trial and error. It's really important that we learn from each other because there is so much that we can learn from each other. So, with that said, if you are just stumbling on my page, or if you've been following for a while and you have an idea of a topic you'd like to see me cover, I love to learn, so don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am not a guru by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have a lot of experience and I do love to research. So I'm sure that as long as it's nothing to do with politics or negativity, that I can check it out and see if I can work it into a Wellness Wednesday topic in the near future. With that said, if you're here, let me know you're here. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things, so if you ask a question or make a comment and I don't respond, then I will after I'm done. It's just because I didn't see it. If you are a regular follower, I hope you enjoyed last week's video on napping. Let me know if you haven't seen it, and I'll tag you with it, or I'll tag you in it so that you can check it out, or just drop the link in the comments. With all of the interesting things I found while researching napping, it only seemed natural to follow it with a talk about the real sleep, the one we want to know about, that 8 or 9 hours or 12 hours or whatever the case may be for you overnight. That is really how we operate. So a common joke for people who are sleep deficient is sleep is overrated. It doesn't matter. But is it really? Because it really isn't. And most of us know that, but it's just a joke that we use from time to time. But sleep is really important. So here's some fun little nerd facts from Donna's Nerd Corner. Sleep apnea impacts 9 to 38% of the general population, according to the National Council on Aging. More than 1/3 of Americans report getting less than 7 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. And about 30% of adults have symptoms of insomnia, which is interesting because last week when we talked about naps, it was about 30% of adults that were sleep deficient and that napped on a regular basis. So I wonder if that's the same group of adults. And then out of that 30%, 10% of the people experiencing insomnia symptoms experience to the point where they are impacting that person's daily life. So there is actually a record for going without sleep, and that is 11 days and 25 minutes. I can't even imagine. I don't know about you. It was a young teenager named Randy who did it as a 1964 science fair project. There are others who claim to have gone longer, but there wasn't any kind of supervised, monitored test, or what's the word I'm looking for? Am I going to have trouble making words today? In any case, it was never supervised or monitored to the point where they could officially beat that record. So the record stands at 11 days and 25 minutes in 1964. According to ZQuil.com, yes, they have a website. ZQuil has a website. According to ZQuil.com, there is a correlation between daylight savings time and fatal heart attacks. There is an increase in fatal heart attacks when we spring forward and lose that hour of sleep. And there's a decrease in fatal heart attacks when we fall back and gain that hour of sleep back. Correlation does not necessarily equal causation. Just keep that in mind. That's statistics 101. One of the few things I probably remember from my statistics class. There are also some sleep-specific words which I found very interesting, and one of these I can definitely harness that you may not have ever heard of, according to ZQL.com. Somnophobia is the fear of falling asleep. I can't honestly say that unless when I was a kid and I had fear of missing out on something, which we now call FOMO, didn't have a name back then, that somnophobia is ever anything I've had an issue with. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing this right, but onophobia is the fear of nightmares or dreams. Clinomania, again, I should have looked up these pronouncements, is the irresistible urge to stay cozy in bed all day. Okay, who hasn't had that? Especially on a rainy day, right? While dysania, and this is your girl right here, is the word for that feeling when you've just woken up and really don't want to get out of bed. That's also a feeling that I have frequently found I experience when I'm experiencing burnout, where I just wake up and I'm glued to the bed and I know I need to get up and there's no reason to stay in bed because I'm awake, but I just don't want to get up and I just feel glued to the bed. So just some random words there that are sleep specific that you may or may not have ever heard. I know I've never heard of any of them, so I thought that was kind of an interesting factoid. There is evidence that pets and even insects experience insomnia and the negative effects of it. I don't know who's testing insects for sleep, but more power to y'all, because that cannot be exciting stuff right there. And that elephants, out of all the animals, elephants sleep the least and koalas sleep the most. There's a Harvard study that says you cannot catch up on sleep. I'm not sure if I left that open, but you cannot catch up on sleep. And I have heard that before many times over the years. A sleep deficit is a sleep deficit. And oftentimes when you try to catch up on sleep by staying in bed much later, what ends up happening is you're disoriented and your performance in general is impeded anyway. And beyond that, the last factoid is there are over 100 recognized sleep disorders. That's crazy to me. So with that said, how much sleep do we need? 8 hours is not necessarily the magic number. That's what we've always heard. That's what we've always been told. And we all know that children need a lot more sleep, depending on their age, sometimes 12 to 16 hours. That's why little kids still nap in school, or at least in VPK. Not by the time they hit kindergarten, naps are gone. When I was in kindergarten, we still had naps. But 8 hours is not necessarily the magic number. Most experts say 7 or more hours of sleep for adults aged 18 to 60 years old. But it truly depends on your individual needs, and it also depends on your genetics. If you have a string of family members who are known for never sleeping more than 4 or 5 hours, and then they're up and they're ready to go and they're rallying all day, then it may be in your genetics that you just don't need more sleep than that. And of course, it's really important to remember that quality is more important than quantity when it comes to sleep. Because you can spend 12 hours in bed, but if your sleep is interrupted and you're not going through all of the sleep cycles all the time, then you might not feel like you got more than 6. So quality is definitely better than quantity. If you're waking up refreshed and energetic throughout the day, don't worry about the number. Listen to your body. Now, with that said, I have a new watch. I'm Team Garmin. This is my 3rd Garmin watch since 2009. I really adore them, but this particular new one has some extra bells and whistles. And one of them is a morning report and a sleep score that tells you how. In fact, I haven't looked at mine today, so let's look at it. That's today's. Ooh, I got a good sleep score this time. We'll talk about that. That's where I'm going. So I got a really good sleep score last night. Which is unusual anymore, because what happens is, this thing supposedly, okay, now I can't get out of it. I've had it for a few months. You'd think I'd know how to work it by now. So this one's got some new bells and whistles. One of them is a sleep score. and it has a morning report that pops up on my screen, which I've actually considered shutting off. And that's what I want to talk about here. So listen to your body over electronic measurements. Watches, Fitbits, things like this, they are fabulous. They are a great way to do some basic tracking. But the truth of the matter is that I have watched this one and my previous one over time, and I have many, many times questioned the accuracy. For example, the watch may tell me that I have a great sleep score and I wake up feeling groggy and not ready to go, where at other times it may tell me that my sleep was terrible, but I am ready to rally and good all day. So remember that these are baselines and that you really need to pay attention to your body to determine your sleep needs and whether or not you're sleeping okay, and not necessarily the electronic, because there's really just only so accurate it can be, even with cool things like heart rate monitors in the watch. And I've seen many times where I've begun to question the statistics so much that as much as I appreciate them, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I look at the morning report and I'm like, it says that I got terrible sleep, and I'm just like, I don't understand. I feel great. And then it kind of just sets a mood for the day that maybe isn't healthy. So remember that these are only, it's just like logging your food. It's estimates, okay? Nothing, if you're not in a controlled experimental environment, there is nothing that guarantees absolute accuracy. And that the most important thing is still to listen to your body, even over the electronics, unless you're on some kind of specific machine that's been prescribed by a doctor. If you're relying on your watches and Fitbit to determine your health, that's probably not the best thing. And then there's the sleep vacation. So when you ask yourself the question, how much sleep do you need? There's actually a little way that most people can find out. Now, this is probably not going to work for everyone. I actually did this many, many years ago, the first time I heard about it. So when I went looking for it, and this is kind of what started the decision to talk about sleep today when we discussed naps last week, because I was working on incorporating it into my nap discussion. But then I was like, you know what? No, this is all appropriate for a whole new discussion on that actual night of sleep you're getting. So you can take a sleep vacation. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at that. I looked it up because I remember doing the test. I remembered hearing about it somewhere and doing the test myself, and it actually worked for me for a very long time. And with that said, just like anything else, our bodies change all the time, and our sleep needs may change as well. But there is actually a sleep test or a sleep vacation that you can do to determine how much sleep you need. Now, at the time that I did this, my understanding was you go to bed when you feel tired, you wake up when you wake up, no alarm, and over a period of 3 to 4 days, you take the number of hours you slept and you divide it by the number of days, and you get an average, and that's the approximate number of hours you need of sleep per night. And at the time, I was just starting to train for half marathons, and what came up was 7 hours. And I found out over a period of 4 or 5 days that if I did not set my alarm, I frequently woke up feeling very refreshed 7 hours after I went to bed, whatever time that was. What I also learned about myself was that if I slept too much past that 7 hours, that I didn't feel as good as when I got the 7 hours pretty much on the head. So I learned at the time to just, no matter what time I went to bed, to set my alarm for 7 hours after I went to bed to make sure that I didn't oversleep, because every time I did, I felt like I'd been hit by a Mack truck the next day. So now I looked this up for the purposes of this discussion today, to see if my memory was correct, if there was any truth to it, if anything had been discounted. And I found 2 things. I found WikiHow, and I also found a Harvard study that talks about sleep and a sleep vacation. So these are similar, but a little bit different. So WikiHow says, let's see, where'd it go? To perform the simple test, it may take more than 1 night. You need several nights in a row to get the best results. This is similar to the one I did. And it says, step 1 of the test is to go to bed at a reasonable time. If you're looking for a time when you can sleep in, then that probably means it's a weekend or a series of days that you have off from work or school. For the test to work, you have to resist staying up later than normal since you can sleep in the next day. Get accurate results from the test by sticking with a routine bedtime each night. Next, do not set the alarm clock. Allow yourself to wake up naturally. If you are like most people, you will probably sleep a long time that first night, maybe even 16 hours or more. Now, WikiHow says this is because you're in a situation of sleep debt, whereas Harvard says there's no such thing. If you have a serious sleep debt, then you may have to deal with that before you can get the best results. If your sleep debt is not substantial, then proceed with the next test. So keep in mind that it can take 4 to 5 days. After the first night of longer than average sleep, continue with the same bedtime. Avoid setting the alarm. After a few days, you will wake up at about the same time every day naturally. And that's going to tell you how many hours of sleep your body actually needs. But you got it, according to WikiHow, and it's WikiHow, y'all. Just keep that in mind. You have to get past that sleep debt first. Now, a Harvard study has shown that there is no such thing as a sleep debt. You can't really make up sleep you're missing. I'm sure any of us could argue that on any given day. But Harvard says you need to take a sleep vacation to figure out how many hours of sleep you need. So during a 2-week period when you have a flexible schedule or are perhaps on vacation, again, pick a consistent bedtime. Do not use an alarm clock to wake up. Chances are that for the first few days of the week, you will sleep longer because, and they even use the same words, so a little bit of contradiction here, because you're paying off your sleep debt. If you continue going to bed at the same time and allowing your body to wake up naturally, you will eventually establish a pattern of sleeping essentially the same time each night, probably in the range of 7 to 9 hours. And congratulations, you've identified the amount of sleep you need. So obviously that's not going to work for everybody. If you're somebody that's having trouble getting to sleep at night, which I was for a while, or you're one of those people that tends to wake up for a couple hours in the middle of the night, this might not work for you. But for those of us that are getting fairly regular sleep, this might be, and sometimes you're like, I don't think I'm getting enough. And other times you're like, I think I'm getting too much, which was my case. I definitely operated better on 7 hours of sleep, regimented, versus sleeping 8 hours this day, 9 hours that day. I just definitely got better sleep. So little fun test you can do if you have the ability to do so. Okay, so what are the effects of not getting enough sleep? And if y'all are here, I'm sorry, but Facebook isn't showing me any eyeballs, any comments, anything today. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm just not seeing you. So again, if you're here, let me know you're here. We'll see if it pops up on the screen. So what are the effects of not getting enough sleep? A lot more than you might think. I've actually heard of people having psychotic bursts, because of being sleep deprived. If you have a family who is known for sleepwalking, I grew out of mine when I was about 16, 17 years old. But I know people that still have sleepwalking issues even as adults. If you're not getting enough sleep, your chances of sleepwalking are significantly increased. If you're the nocturnal type like that. But you have an increased risk of mental disorders such as anxiety and depression. Actually, sometimes the symptoms of sleep deprivation and the symptoms of depression can look very much the same, and they will feed each other. If you're not getting enough sleep, it feeds the depression. If you're depressed or anxious, it may feed the fact that you can't sleep. So keep that in mind. That's cyclical. There's also an increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia. Remember that sleep is very much and very closely associated with memory formation, memory recording, and making sure that memory sticks. Sleep helps, we talked about this last week with naps, sleep helps to convert memory, short-term memory to long-term memory. So when you're not getting enough sleep, that's not happening, and that can definitely contribute to cognitive decline and dementia. Lack of sleep reduces the ability to remember and regulate emotion and attention, and it interferes with general information processing. So you may think you're at your best when you've pulled an all-nighter, but the truth of the matter is that if you are sleep deprived, your performance and your thought processing and all of that is slowing down for every extra amount of time you go without sleep. You have sleep deprivation is definitely linked to an increased risk of chronic diseases or chronic conditions like obesity, the components of metabolic syndrome, let me try that again. The components of metabolic syndrome, which are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and high blood sugar, and also cardiovascular diseases. Why? Because sleep deprivation is also tied to, or one of, not the only reason, but one of the primary reasons is that sleep deprivation is tied to increased cravings for high fats and carbs and reduced exercise. So what happens is, if we're tired, we have a tendency to grab for things food related that we wouldn't necessarily in an effort to stay awake. I've experienced that before. And then on top of that, we have reduced motivation because we're tired, so we're less likely to exercise. So those two things combined are part of the reason, only part, that the sleep deprivation is tied to chronic conditions like obesity and high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and high cholesterol. And also, this is extremely important too, and I can attest to that personally. If you think about it, you probably can too. The negative impact on the immune system has an extremely negative impact on the immune system, and it contributes to persistent low-grade, autocorrect changed my notes and says inflammation. The word is inflammation. Increased persistent low-grade inflammation. We know that studies are finding that a lot of chronic conditions, even down to cancer, MS, stuff like that, is tied to inflammation. A lot of things are tied to inflammation. And I don't know about you, but if I'm fighting something, even if I'm doing all the things, the extra vitamin C, making sure I get my exercise, making sure I eat nutritiously, if I have short nights of sleep while I'm fighting that, I am that much more likely to succumb to whatever it is I'm fighting. It's happened more than once where I thought I was getting over something, had a short night or a bad night of sleep, interrupted, and bam, here it comes all over again. So there is an extreme negative impact on the immune system, which of course at some point is going to inadvertently affect the other things. So how do we sleep better or more? First of all, you have to prioritize and even maybe regulate your sleep like I did. Now, since then, there's been a lot of body changes. I've gone through menopause. I'm not exercising as much sometimes or in the same ways that I was. So it seems like my sleep needs have changed. I'm not actually sure that the hours of sleep I need have changed. I think the problem is, for me, that the quality of my sleep has changed because sometimes I struggle at night to get to sleep. I'm not one of those that usually wakes up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. Usually once I'm there, I'm good, but it's that getting there sometimes that is difficult. And that's I attribute largely to my menopausal state or my postmenopausal state. And if you're a napper, as we discussed last week, napping is excellent and more people should do it, but your naps should be early in the day. Experts recommend not later than 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they should be 30 minutes or less for optimal performance without interfering with your nightly sleep. I know that if I'm asleep past 3 o'clock, I'm going to pay for it later in the evening, and that anything over 30 minutes gives me sleep inertia where I feel like my body parts are made of cement and I can't get up and move. So you've got to prioritize sleep. You've got to make it an important thing because it actually has a direct impact on your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and your emotional well-being. But your cognitive processes, all of that. But you may actually need to regulate your sleep like I did, where for the most part, except maybe one day a week, I just didn't allow once I determined how much sleep I needed, I just learned that if I regulated and didn't allow myself to sleep more than that, is usually when I was at my optimal performance and felt the best for the longest parts of the day. Whereas if I didn't regulate and I let myself lay in bed long enough to fall back asleep after I woke up or didn't set an alarm, if I get 8 to 10 hours of sleep overnight, I am dragging my rear end for the rest of the day, or at least the first part of it. It's bad. So it's just better that I regulate my sleep. And you may be one of those people too. You may also be one of those people that just automatically gets up without an alarm, so you don't have to regulate it because your body's like, wake up, you're done. And I envy you. Let me just tell you that, because lately I've been struggling with the snooze alarm. So daily exercise is super important. Now, with my handy dandy watch, I've noticed a few things. On the days that I work out, I have an increased overnight heart rate variable status, which is one of the random stats from my watch. And I also usually have a better sleep score. On the days I do not work out, both of those drop. So working out more regularly actually increases some of those stats. So when my watch tells me you had a crappy night of sleep, doesn't say that, but that's how I take it. If my watch tells me you had a crappy night of sleep, today needs to be a rest day. I disagree with that, because I know that more often than not, the nights that I don't sleep as well are the nights that I didn't exercise. So exercise is super important, y'all. Exercise meaning anything, a 30-minute walk, 30 minutes of yoga, get out in the fresh air, run, whatever it is you do that makes you feel active and moves your body, those are important things. Sunlight is super important. I know. We all think that sunlight is evil, and that we're not supposed to be out there without complete full coverage and sunscreen and the whole 9 yards. But if you can just get out there in the morning, say between 10 and 12 for 15 or 20 minutes, with as little covering as possible, the benefits that you can reap are huge. And then even being out in the sun and the warmth and the fresh air with sunscreen and coverage is huge. You need that. It helps with melatonin production. It helps with vitamin D production. We all know this. Most people may not realize that it actually helps with melatonin production. So if you got out in the sun more, you might need that melatonin supplement less. Minimize alcohol, caffeine, and avoid heavy meals before bed. For me, this is kind of a no-brainer. It's really hard to get to sleep when you've got a really overfull belly. But I do notice that on the nights that I've had a couple of beers, and I don't drink that often or drink that much, but on the nights that I have alcohol, my sleep cycles don't look the same. It looks like I have a much longer, deeper sleep with less cycling, which is also not the best. You need those sleep cycles. And obviously caffeine taken in too late in the day can affect your sleep. And actually caffeine taken in at all can affect it as well. And heavy meals, like I said, that's just kind of a no-brainer. Give your food plenty of time to digest before you try to go horizontal with it. Stress and time management. These are actually really important things, because if you're going to bed freaking out about everything you didn't get done, hi, it's me, I'm the problem. Freaking out about everything you didn't get done and about everything you have to do tomorrow, then that could be causing issues with getting to sleep. Now, most of the time when I have trouble getting to sleep, it's not because I'm actually thinking about anything. I'm laying there thinking I want to go to sleep. So stress, time management, if you've got a lot going on, do a little journal dump or make a list. If you're constantly thinking about the things that you have to do the next day, this is a tip from my mentor, which is take out a piece of paper and brain dump all the things. Make your list the night before, block your calendar so that that's done and you've got it out of your brain for the next day before you go to bed. Time management makes a big difference. If you need to journal, if you've got some stress, journaling, like I said, making lists, time blocking your calendar can make all the difference for the following day and get that stuff out of your brain before you're going to sleep worrying about it. Meditation. I am still very sporadic with my meditation. I actually went, I think, like almost 6 months with meditating every single day, gradually getting longer without stopping. And I saw the benefits. I can't really describe them to you, but I saw the benefits. Now, I am by no means what they call a proficient meditator. Let's see, where's that page that I saved? I am by no means a proficient meditator, but there are studies that show, and there are also, if you're into this, there are also Buddhist recordings. I'm not using the right word, but I can't think of it right now. Buddhist texts that indicate that proficient meditators need less sleep. I know we've all heard stories about this, but people that meditate on a regular basis, that are able to reach that area that you can reach with meditation in between awake and sleep, that's not completely awake and not completely asleep, that because of that meditation, they don't need more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. And they can attest, they've paid attention enough and they've tried it long enough that they can attest that it is the meditation that has made that happen for them. So there is something to that. So if you really want less sleep or want to sleep better, then meditation is something you can consider if that's something that's on your radar, because it can actually help with a lot of things and help you be more mindful. It can help with stress management, and it may make your sleep better. in a number of different ways. And then the most important and final thing is to create a restful environment. Turn off, put down electronics. Now, I'm the first to admit I'm guilty of looking at my phone after I lay down in bed. I'm also guilty of having the TV on for about 90 minutes at bedtime. I turn it on. I put it on an old rerun of usually Golden Girls because I've seen them all 18 times. And so I put it on and I put the volume down low where I can hear it and I'm not straining to hear it, but I don't even have to open my eyes to know what's going on because I've seen all the episodes so many times. You're not supposed to really do that, but I feel like I need that white noise to help me go to sleep. But I also have my eyes closed, so I'm not really looking at the screen. But the recommendation for a restful environment is turn off, put down your electronics 30 minutes before bed, take the TV out of the bedroom. Blue light from the screens interferes with melatonin production levels, so keep that in mind. So if that's an option for you, put the phone away, leave it somewhere else, put it across the room so when the alarm goes off, you have to get up and go shut it off and can't stay in bed. Something like that. But create a restful environment. Make sure it's cool. Make sure it's dark. Make sure that you have the right weights of blankets or the right warmth, the things that make you feel most comfortable so that you can easily get to sleep when you do climb into bed. Typical time to get asleep is 10 to 15 minutes. And now I'm getting that. Now I'm asleep probably within 15 to 20 minutes most nights when I go to bed. I also have tried a couple of different things since I started menopause that have really helped with my sleep disturbances. Those I can't talk about here. If you would like to know more about that, you can send me a message. Something that I started when I first started with menopause that really helped with sleep disturbances. And then something new I started doing back in November that seems to have helped with the delayed sleep that I've been experiencing. And I've definitely, since I started using it, been getting to sleep faster most nights. So if you want to know more information about that, you can shoot me a message. Otherwise, do some of the things we talked about. Hopefully you found this helpful. And remember that just like when we discuss naps, if you have a sudden increase in the need for sleep for no apparent reason, it might be a flag. It might be a flag that you need your meds adjusted. Good morning, Miss Dawn. I'm just wrapping up. I hope you will go back and listen from the beginning. If you have a sudden increased need for sleep for no apparent reason, that might be a flag. It might be a flag that if you're on medication, it needs to be adjusted, or that you have a sleep disorder, and that you may need to reach out to your family physician, general practitioner, whatever, to talk about if you're finding that all of a sudden you need a whole lot more sleep than you did and you can't figure out why. That may indicate some type of medical problem or medication problem, and definitely something that you need to look into. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you learned something you didn't know. Even if it's just about Randy, the teenager that went for 11 days and 25 minutes without sleep. And if you found this helpful, please share. Please feel free to let me know if you have suggestions for future topics that I can kind of dig into. And as always, have a fabulous Wednesday. I will see you next week. Bye.